Hello and welcome to the Beef Edge, the Teagasc Beef Podcast, for all your latest news, information and advice for Irish beef farmers. I'm Catherine Egan, and kicking off the first episode for the podcast in 2022, I'm joined by beef farmer Ronan Delany from Dunshaughlin, County Meath, to get an insight into his farming system, how he's managed to meet the challenge of reducing the age to slaughter, and his plans to progress in the year ahead. Ronan, Happy New Year, you're very welcome. You have years of experience finishing cattle. Can you tell me about your farming system?
Sure, I suppose we're kind of a typical Irish family farm. Myself and Dad are here kind of at it day to day. I have two young kids. My partner works off farm. Mama's involved in other things off farm. It's all hands on deck sometimes. We've about 200 acres, I suppose, give or take. We've maybe 400 ewes approximately, and we try and finish 210 or 20 heifers every year, mainly off grass if we can.
And can you talk me through what type of cattle you're looking at buying in? If you're finishing over 200 heifers a year, what are you looking for when you're going to the market trying to source heifers?
Yeah, well, if you came to our farm and looked at the cattle we have, you'd see every colour under the sun and every type under the sun. Really, we don't have a particular preference. We buy a mixture of everything. Our sort of main thing when we're buying them is we want to try and buy them at a year old at approximately 350 kilos on their first move if we can. Just feel that they're probably heifers that didn't get a setback. They were on, you don't want to be buying cattle that were moved around the country too much, because in my opinion, there's far too much moving of stock going on for no real need. So that's what we stick to. We have a price per kilo in our head. We do all our purchasing online since COVID started. I haven't bought an animal in a mart since pre-COVID. I've actually, with online marts, I've bought cattle in marts now that I've never even set foot in. Buy them online, we pay for them online, and we get delivered here to the farm the next day. And it works very well, because I just printed off our ICBF slaughter report last night for 2021, well, up to last week, and 30% of our carcasses this year are grade R plus or better, which will be up a lot on when I was actually physically going to the mart.
And the fact you're buying a variety of different breeds, what's your final decision when you're sitting at home buying the cattle online as to whether you're going to buy or not?
Their age, their weight, their number of moves, and price per kilo.
And what are you looking for on a price per kilo, or what have you in your head for?
Sure. The last 4 or 5 years, I keep records of all prices bought in. The last 4 or 5 years, we're kind of operating at an average of around 220 a kilo. We'd be buying some at €2 a kilo, maybe 195 a kilo, and we'd be buying others at 240 and 250 a kilo. It depends, because we'd buy U grade Belgian blues, we'd buy O minus Angus and Herefords, and everything in between. Because we find if you buy a good variety from Herefords, Angus, Charolais, Limousines, and all the crosses in between, that it works well for a grass-based system, in that plain or poorer quality ones will come fit off the grass in July, August, September without any feeding. They're gone out of the system when the price is a bit higher, because they're invariably, because of their breeds, they're a little bit poorer on the grade, and higher the price you're going at them in the middle of the summer, the better for that type of animal. Whereas when it comes to this time of the year, if you go down our yard today, there's good quality Charolais and Limousines down there that are on 6 or 7 kilos of nuts a day, and they'll put on the weight for you in September, October, November. Whereas we just find if you bought all of one type, you'd be selling them all. We're aiming to sell cattle at least 9 months of the year if we can, or 10 months.
And from once the cattle arrive on the yard, how are they managed on the farm?
When they come from the mart, in say January, February, March time, we normally put them into a straw bed, get a bale of hay, and that's pretty much it. And a drink of water, obviously, but that's kind of pretty much it for 2 or 3 days. Just let them settle, keep an eye on them, don't really go near them. When they're here maybe about a week, we'll clip their tails, clip all their backs. They'll go, depending on the time in the spring, we house all our ewes for lambing. So if the ewes lamb in February, March, we'll ramp up buying heifers as the sheep sheds come empty. And it works the same this time of the year when the sheep are out. Leave the sheep sheds full now with finishing heifers. So 6 months of the year, but we clip their backs and tails. They might go on to slats, then they might go on to straw. They'll just be on silage. We probably give them a product maybe after 3 weeks or a month to cover fluke and worms. Normally we dose them if we can down the throat when they get here first. I just find it's probably, I just think it cleans them out better. It's cheaper as well, but I just think it's probably too many pour-ons and injections just been used. I think the dosing sometimes can work just as well or better, and it just takes a bit of work and organisation. That's all.
And how are they managed then when they go to grass?
We normally try and put the smallest, lightest ones out first. We let them out in groups of 10, maybe even groups of 5. We don't start off, because we've ewes and lambs around the farm, we don't start off with a big bank of grass in any one particular area. So we normally put 5 cattle to the different fields. We've 3, our farm is in 3 divisions. One is about 2.5 kilometers away, and then the other one's about 6 or 7 kilometers away. So when they go out to those farms, they stay out. So that's why we put 5 out maybe the middle of February. We could have 50 out, but they'd be in 10 different groups of 5. And then as the weeks go on and the weather gets better, we bunch them up into groups of 40 or 50, or maybe 25. We wouldn't put any more than 50 together in a grazing group with maybe 80 or 90 ewes on their lambs, and they'll just be rotationally grazed then for the summer, and that's it. They'll get a dose if they need it, maybe when they're coughing in June or July, but we look at them for 5 minutes every day, and that's it. We try to do it with as little effort and as little labour as we can.
And based on your experience, what targets are you aiming for then when you're starting to draft them from grass?
Well, in June and July, maybe in August, when we're going with some maybe more of them dairy cross cattle, we'd be going at 255, 260, 270 kilos at 17, 18, 19 months of age. We don't have set weight in our head that we want to get a heifer to. That kind of starts when we're buying them. Like, we'll buy a 300 kilo Hereford heifer maybe if she's at €2 a kilo or 190 kilo. And because of where we are farming in County Meath, those heifers tend to get very fat very quick up here. So if she gets to July and we think she's enough cover on her and she's only 245, 250 kilos, and we're going to make our margin on her, she's gone out the gate, you know. So we don't have, as they come fit, we start selling them, and that's just it. That's why it's so crucial today we're buying them to stick to the price you have in your head and the price you think you're going to get for them in the autumn when you're buying them, you know. That's the beauty of the online marts. You're not under pressure to buy cattle like you were years ago. If you drove to west of Ireland, where we buy 99% of our cattle, you had a 3-hour drive maybe down there, the whole day down there. If trade was dear, with the best will in the world, you might stand there for an hour and not buy anything, but eventually you get sucked in and you'll say, I'm not going to waste my day, and you'll buy 10 or 12 or 8. Because last spring, several days, I came up from the yard after lambing ewes and watched the computer for 40 minutes, an hour, got nothing, turned it off, and went back down to the yard and did my jobs. And I might come in that evening at 7 o'clock and turn on a different mart, or turn on a different mart the next day. It's just made the job so much easier. Like,
It's made life a lot easier from a labour point of view as well, as you mentioned. And for the heifers that you've in at the moment that you've mentioned that are, what rate of concentrates are they getting, or how are you going to achieve a fat cover on those heifers?
they're on, as I said to you earlier, by buying a big range and mixture of cattle, you'll end up with 70 or 80 cattle in November that are your Charolais and your limousines, your better quality cattle. We'll just kind of draft them by eye off grass, maybe and like this year they were out till well into November. We obviously brought in maybe 10 or 12 earlier, started them on feed. We've 3 sheds down there where we probably have 10 or 12 heifers in each shed, and they'll start. We just put them in today on hay or haylage, and we just start them straight away on 6 or 7 kilos enough today. We don't do any building up on 2 kilos for a week or 10 days. They just go straight on 6, 7 kilos a day. And after 3 or 4 weeks, just start drafting out the ones that are finished. And if we take out 5 out of the shed, we'll put 5 other ones in to keep up the number of 10, and they just start eating on the 6 or 7 kilos. And like that, we just keep going until January, February, till they're all gone.
And the fact your average slaughter age for heifers is 19.5 months, some might say it's hard to do. What's your secret for achieving that from grass?
I'd say it's where we live. And it's also probably, we are very lucky. Like, we've all our lambs gone this year. I know all our lambs gone this year with no concentrates, bar maybe 20 ram lambs. Heifers probably fed 35 or 40 so far. There's another 35 or 40 to go on feed out of 220 or 30 in the year. That'll show you how many we're killing off. But we don't have an agenda in our head really that they need to be X weight going to the factory, X age. See, that's why I like buying that heifer that's a year old at 350 or 60 or 400 kilos, whatever she is. She might be only 9 months age and she'd be 400 kilos. Like, the youngest heifer we killed this year was 13 months of age, and the oldest one I think was 26 months of age.
And do you think that 19.5 months, can that be reduced? Like you've mentioned there, that heifer that you've killed, a huge variation across the heifers up to 26 months. Is there?
The majority of them will be like at 17, 18, 19 months. Like, rarely, be very few of ours can go over 20 months. But some other people might come to our yard and say, God, you should be feeding them cattle for another year. But like, I saw a heifer last night online in a mart. She was a 2018 born heifer, 600 kilos. She made 1430. And we sold heifers yesterday at 20 months of age that made 1460. And they weren't 600, they were maybe 600 kilos alive. I just think there's far too many older cattle floating around. She had 5 moves on her, that heifer, online last night as well. So I just think, get them in, get them out, buy another heifer, go again. The more heifers you can move in the year and make your margin on each one, it's better for you than keeping them for 2 years and only making the same margin.
And you also run a sheep flock, Roland. What benefits are you seeing to having a mixed beef and sheep system?
I don't think you could measure the benefits, even though I've read stuff in books and at conferences where they say it's only a small benefit. I think it's a huge benefit, just from even grazing wise, fields. Some beef people who have come to our farm to walk and looking at cattle or sheep for different events have always said that they couldn't believe how thick the butt is on our farm. I think that's like that on any beef or sheep farm. Like, the sheep will eat all the stuff the cattle won't eat. They'll eat in close to the dung paths. I definitely think, I don't care what anyone says, I definitely think it has a huge effect on cattle having, I wouldn't say more resistance to worms, but definitely are cleaner, the cattle and the sheep. and cleaner as I mean in warm board, and like I no, I think they're I don't think you could measure the benefits. I can just see it, in what we're doing here with the cattle and the sheep. Um, and like as well as that, like you have your sheep out maybe a bit earlier in the year if the grass is growing, you can keep the cattle in a bit longer. Like the whole thing fits in well when the sheep are taken away from their lambs with the grass. Well, you have your cattle there to eat all that grass.
And looking to the new year, what would be the key 2 or 3 areas that you're going to be focusing on your farm?
I'd say every year should we try to grow more grass and keep more heifers. I really think coming back to it, I think the online market has been the biggest game changer for a beef farmer in Ireland. If because like trading beef and cattle is just like trading any commodity. And you look at stockbrokers, bankers, anyone in business, the first thing they do in the morning when they go in is turn on the computer and look at their spreadsheets or the FTSE or the New York Stock Exchange or whatever, see what way things have gone and whatever shares and whatever business they're in. So cattle job should be just the same. Like, and that's why we're not buying any cattle at the minute, but I would always still look at the market for 10 or 20 minutes every day. And I think in the new year, sure, we'll start off buying and we'll see what way things are going. And sure, we'll still have the same budget in our head for finishing price and finishing weight. We'll obviously, our average carcass weight this year is 299 kilos. So like to probably try and get that up a little bit if we could, maybe. It's just, I suppose, keep going, finish more cattle if you can. Maybe try and do a second batch of cattle, buy some more cattle in July when the first ones are gone, and turn over 2 cattle in the year if you can.
So you'd be hoping to increase the number of heifers from 200 to.
I'd like to try and go with maybe 5 heifers every week for 9 months of the year, 10 months of the year. I'd like to be able to go with 5 heifers for the full 12 months of the year, because it's a fantastic way of selling them. You're hitting all the high spots, you're hitting all the low spots, so you get a good average over the whole year. You have the ones off the grass, you have the ones out of the shed. The whole thing complements each other and it fits in well with what we're trying to do here, which is just like we feed the heifers in the shed with buckets. It takes 5 or 10 minutes in the morning, 5 or 10 minutes in the evening. Like we have a meal bin that holds 5 ton of meal. We're just trying to do it as simply as we can, which is least amount of work and effort as we can as well.
That's great, Ronan. Most definitely key points for working on in the year ahead. And thanks very much for your insight into the farming system. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well, Catherine.
That's all for this week's episode, and my thanks to Ronan for joining me on the show. You can catch up on all other shows and interviews from the Beef Edge podcast on the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie, or you can listen on Apple and Google Podcasts as well as Spotify. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe so you never miss a show. For all other updates from our beef programme, keep an eye on our Twitter and Facebook pages. Until next time, I'm Catherine Egan and thanks for listening.